In this video, I'm going to be looking at my preliminary task and looking at the progression since then to the final product, which is the film opening. This is a snapshot from our film opening. The reason I want to look at this is because I want to talk about how, with the film opening, we really had to think and use our own ideas compared to the preliminary task, which gave us a chance to show off what we have learned. What I mean by this is when it came to the preliminary task, we had already been given simply what we had to do. We were given instructions such as the teachers told us that they wanted to see these types of shots, and they gave us a simple structure to the script, as in they gave us the plot. They told us we had to use two characters and they were saying hi to each other. While with the film opening, we came up with our own ideas and we developed them. And the reason I'm looking at this image is because the shattered phone you see on the ground, we had to come up with how we were going to make the phone look shattered, even though it wasn't. And it took us a while. We came up with all sorts of ideas, such as we were going to use cling film and try and make it look as if it was shattered glass, but it didn't work. So we then decided to go with a background of shattered image, and we used that to make the phone look shattered, which I think on camera worked really well. With our group, planning was a big issue. We had planned everything out, which we thought was quite perfect. We planned to film in Camden and use the waters around Camden to create a kind of enigma, and it went really well with the character. But when we had planned this out, we hadn't had thought about all the tourists and the time of day we would be able to film and those kind of situations, which led to loads of trouble when it came to filming, as if we didn't get there early enough, as you see in this picture, this was really early on. But sometimes when we came in later to film, there would be too many people to actually have a chance to film anything. Also, when we were filming by the canal, we faced many issues such as cyclists. They were always there cycling back and forth, and there wasn't enough space, so we'd have to always move out of the way, and it would cause many problems as we kept having to stop what we were doing to let people pass by. This was one of the issues that we were faced with, and I think for our group it was one of the worst issues that we could have been faced with. We were really close to finishing our final piece and getting the last bit of filming done, and we weren't aware that they had closed down our area where we were supposed to be filming. No one told us about it, even though the builders had seen us previously, and we didn't think that they were going to close it down so soon. So when this happened, we got a shock, and because it was it was almost like it was last minute, so we had to quickly try and think of a solution, and it was pretty difficult as our spot was already very mise en scène. We had the whole graffiti and the lighting, and if we had automatically changed that, it would be quite noticeable in the film opening and it wouldn't work. After a while, we decided to use another bridge and a different angle, so it looked like we were still using the same bridge, and when looking at the film that we had filmed, it's not noticeable that we had changed areas and we had changed a lot of things. Also, when we were filming the last bit, who was acting in the movie, had changed my hair color because it didn't cross my mind when I was changing the hair color. So we had to work with lighting to try and make it look as if the color was still the same and nothing had been changed. I think we managed to pull it off, but if you look carefully enough, I think you can slightly notice the subtle change in color. Personally, when it came to editing, I feel like I improved quite a bit. The reason for this is because I had a partner who already knew how to use iMovie Maker while I didn't know how to use it. So when it came to the preliminary task, I had to always ask my partner how each thing worked, how I would add, for example, a title, how I would cut this scene and make it shorter. And by the time we got to editing our main task, I felt as if I had learnt all of these new things and I was able to cope with what I was doing. I'm quite thankful for my partner and for teachers for teaching us how to do all of this, because I don't think I'd know how to use iMovie Maker now if it wasn't for being able to practice with the preliminary task. As you can tell, this photo is not from our actual task and what we had done, but I wanted to add this in as I think it's important, as it has to do a bit with editing. When we were filming, one of the days it was quite grey and there was hardly any light. And the next day when we continued filming, there was a lot of light. So an issue we faced was the difference in colour between these two shots. And when trying to fit them together, they didn't work whatsoever because it had suddenly gone from a dark, gloomy day to one of the most brightest days you have ever seen. So with the quick thinking between me and my partner, we decided to use iMovie Maker to edit the lighting and make it from this bright vision to this more bleak image that would fit in more with the whole film. We had to use contrasts and we had to use color brighteners, and we managed to make it quite similar so it's not noticeable that it was filmed on different days and the weather had changed completely. Personally, for our group, I think the preliminary task gave us a chance to play around with the equipment and get used to it and learn how to use all of these different things, such as a tripod. When me and my partner were using the tripod for the preliminary task, we had troubles trying to get a straight angle and trying to get the right height. By the time we got to the final product, we had learned how to use this and how to keep the camera steady, which I think if you look back to the preliminary task and you then look at our film opening, you can really tell the difference. Also, when you look at our preliminary task, you can see loads of mistakes we made that we tried to avoid with the final film. For example, my partner, when she was filming the preliminary task, there's this one point where you can see the sleeve of her jumper, and when we so that taught us when we got to actually filming our final piece, when looking at the camera, we should look at the whole thing and try to avoid anything like that. Camera shots, angles, and movement. When we were doing the preliminary task, I had learnt about the camera shots and angles and movement, but I didn't fully quite understand them and grasp the ideas. For example, one of my biggest issues was match on action. I found match on action hard to understand. I knew what it was. It was trying to match the same actions from two different angles. But when it came to editing for the preliminary task, I didn't know how to make it work and how to make it a smooth transaction. While for our final piece, I felt like I understood it more and had practiced a bit more to understand what was actually going on and how to make it look smoother. Another thing is the movement of the camera. With our preliminary task, the movement of the camera isn't steady whatsoever. It's very shaky, and you can tell it's not the best work. You can tell we didn't know how to use the camera. By the time we had gotten to our final task, I think we had learned how to keep the camera steady when moving it from left to right, for example.